Hello everyone. So this is just a little video to show off a camera system I've been working on lately. So I'll just go ahead and jump right into it. So right away you'll probably recognize, if you've watched any of my other videos, is that this one is very similar to the third-person camera I'd used in a demo for a game I was working on. So as you can see, right now I am still signed into Steam apparently. But as I move away or towards the camera, it will sort of pull out a bit. It doesn't immediately track the player. There's a little bit of delay, and it will sort of move back to this ideal position. The same can be said for side-to-side panning, and you'll actually see like there's a little bit of dead space right there where if you make slight movements, it won't track anything. The main difference between this and my other camera is that this one has some vertical pan added to it. So you'd see it doesn't immediately track the player when they're jumping, and there's a bit of a delay, which is them sort of moving through the different adjustment zones. Because like with the pan, there's a little dead space in it. As well, I've added I've added a setup where if you leave the mouse for too long, it will slowly go back to its original position behind the player. I just like this because it's nice if their player is idling for some reason, or if they like want to stop and look at a menu or something. This way, it sort of goes back to this more cinematic feel. Um, I kind of would like to set this up later so that it does a full rotation around the player instead, so it kind of just feels like it's panning open and showing what's going on around while they're sitting around checking their phone or something. Sorry, I got off topic there. The other adjustment added here is the camera has a full range of cinematic setups for it. So I'll go ahead and show off one of them here. So what's happening right now is the camera actually has an offset that's rotated from the player, which you can see, and they're set to look at the actual ball right now. It can be set up to be a different target or wherever you want. And it's set up as a start zone, which I have set up about here, and an end zone, which if you go here, there you go. So now it's returned back to normal. So I'll go ahead and show that a bit. So right here is the two boxes as well as some other tools I'm playing around with. Okay, so here you have how the entire cinematic trigger is set up. You have location modes and rotation modes. These are basically what is the camera doing during the cinematic. So you have four types of locations. You can have it set at a precise location in the world. You can have an offset from the player, and you can have a rotated offset. So this will always be like to the left of the player as opposed to it will be 600 in the x-axis no matter what their orientation is. That's the difference between, offset and rotational offset. Now, the last one is path, which is you're just putting the camera onto a spline and having that determine the location. For rotation, we have a set rotation, which is looking in a very specific direction relative to the world. You have look at a target, and you have looking at a path. Or sorry, not looking at a path, but using the same rotation provided by a spline. And this actually does use an offset as well, so you can sort of fine tune it as however you'd like. Now, a few other controls included are whether to use the camera orientation or not. So this applies to the player. In that, well, I'll go ahead and show right now. So right now, it's set up so that the player uses the camera rotation for their movement. So if the forward for the player is forward for the camera as well. If I turn around, and so the camera is looking the opposite direction to what the player is facing, the player snaps to look that way. So that's using camera orientation. Use track allows it so that the player can be put onto a track without the need for either of the modes to be set to path. In the event that either mode is in path, then it is forced to use a track just because of how I have it set up so that it maintains the same distance along the spline as the player is along their spline, if that kind of makes sense. Next up, we have the key forward. So this is just, I have to adjust it later, but right now what it does is they will on the fly change which key is the forward movement. So I put key, but it really is directions in general. So with W forward, the W key is forward. With D forward, the D key is forward, and then W is left, S is right, and so on. And so in this way, if you enter a room and a cinematic triggers, but it's, say, to the side of the player, then this means that they won't have this weird disconnect where pressing W to move forward will actually move them to the right, or something along those lines. And it will come into play later on. I'll show it. And then after that, you have just the basic setups. So you have the camera location, camera offset. Camera offset is actually used for both the offset and rotational offset because they're identical basically. It's just what's happening to them during the update function. The orientation is used to set the orientation. Target is the look at target. Path rotation offset is for paths. And then the camera path and player path, which is saved references to actors that have a spline component. Alright, so that's the full breakdown of how the cinematic trigger boxes are set up. Now I'm going to show a few of these in action. So I'm going to just move on over here where I have this little track set up. This actually contains 3 different cinematic paths, cinematic modes of different combinations. So this one uses set and look at. So it's a set location and it's looking at the player. The player is moving along a path right now. I've just got W and S to move forward. And rather than ending this cinematic, it will instead transition immediately to the next one. So if you have an end trigger box available, then that will just end it. It will go back to normal. But you can also just segue right into the next one if you want. So this is an offset with a set rotation. And in this case, I actually have it set up since the player is looking to the left of the screen. A is now set up as the forward movement. So you don't actually, this is me pressing W and S right now. This is A and D. So in this instance, it creates it so that, well, I wouldn't want to have a situation where it goes straight from a system using W as the forward into one that's using A, but it does show that the player can enter this room, the camera immediately spins around, and now the player doesn't have to sort of have this disconnect of, okay, well, I need to change how I'm moving. So, and now on to the next one, which this is a path for both rotation and location. So as you can see, the player is moving on a path that makes its way through this swamp sort of thing. I just threw this together to be honest. And so as you can see, it has a basic set rotation, which is it's looking at about, I want to say it's negative 45 in the pitch. I'd have to check later. But it's also rotating along with the path, which creates this sort of yaw rotation effect. And once we get into here, there we go, now it's back to normal. And as you can see previously and in this one, it will do a smooth rotation. It will lerp and slurp to a rotation behind the player. So that way it has clean exits into and out of the cinematic modes, which is a lot nicer than it just snapping right into it. And yeah, so that's what I've got so far. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. But for now, this is just me playing around with things. I'm hoping to add more. As mentioned as well, all the cinematic modes are, you can fully combine them in whatever way you want. So you can have a set and a path. You can have a path and an offset, etc. They all work in tandem quite easily. Yeah, thank you for your time.